Tory MP has challenged his fellow Conservatives to change their attitude towards people who take the knee as an anti-racism protest. Steve Baker made the comments after England players received racist abuse following their defeat in the final on Sunday.
Well, his calls also come after footballer Tyrone Mings criticised Priti Patel over her lack of support for footballers taking a stance against racism. So, are footballers now better role models than politicians? We're joined now by broadcaster Mike Parry, who thinks that soccer players have never lived a real life and simply don't represent the rest of society, and sports journalist Anita Abayomi, who says that children are inspired by footballers and actually, these days, are learning more from them than they are from politicians. And it is true, Anita, isn't it, that footballers in the last few years, and in the last year in particular, you look at Rashford and the school dinners thing, the free school meals, they are actually making a difference, aren't they? They're actually stepping up to the plate and inserting themselves into current affairs and politics.
Exactly that. And it's not just current affairs and it's not just politics as well. We look at other footballers such as Raheem Sterling, we look at Jordan Henderson, and we just see them doing so much for their societies and their communities, and we can't help but call them role models. So we're not just looking at the political side of things, we're also looking at their societies and what they are contributing to their communities. There's this general consensus that because Marcus Rashford has dabbled into politics and, you know, with the feeding the children and his entire regime and him stepping up to the Prime Minister and saying we need to feed these children on their school holidays, a lot of people are saying that they don't have the right to jump into politics. However, the fact is not all footballers are jumping into politics, and not all footballers who jump into politics are role models. Well, you know, so we need to look at from the broader scheme of things.
Mike Parry, we ran a poll on this amongst our viewers who use Twitter. We asked if you believe footballers are now better role models than ministers. And here is the result. 86% think footballers are the role models they would prefer to look up to. Why are they wrong?
Well, I'm not saying they're wrong, to be honest. What Richard has just said about I think that the footballers live in bubbles and all that kind of stuff, that is absolutely right. However, I am absolutely full of admiration for young footballers and the work they do these days in their own communities and for the greater good. The modern young footballer is nothing like the modern young footballer from '96, when we last had a disappointing result in a national championship. '96, we went out in the semi-finals. And I can't praise enough the work that those young footballers are doing all over the world. Some of them have charities in Africa and places like this. But the only thing I'd say is that Marcus Rashford, of course, he stimulated the interest in school meals, he got it going, but he got politicians to change their minds. Now, I want the people who run the country to be elected by the voters like me. I don't want young footballers running the country. And that's not a criticism of them. I am hugely full of admiration for them. The modern young footballer has more of a woke attitude to life than any young footballers have ever had. But they earn £200,000 a week. And it's very easy to be noblesse oblige, you know, to the rest of the population when you're earning millions and millions of pounds, because it doesn't actually cost you anything, but it could cost the country if politicians who are elected suddenly cave in and decide to change the way the country's run because a young footballer who's very popular has a stage, it's usually a football pitch and an interview afterwards, to say things. I don't think that's the way the country should be run.
Abayomi, what do you say to that?
I mean, I personally feel like the fact that this whole situation with Marcus Rashford has happened shows that there is a problem within, you know, the minister's cabinet, because at the end of the day, Marcus Rashford's initiative was shut down. Initially, it was shut down. So Marcus Rashford took things into his own hands and went forward with his own initiative and used his millions, his hundreds of thousands that he makes every single week to actually start his own foundation and start, you know, feeding children who are of a less privileged background at the same time. So saying that, you know, they make millions and they probably don't, you know, walk a mile in our shoes is actually very incorrect, because we look at some of these footballers like Raheem Sterling, like Calvin Phillips, like all of these boys that went to play in the Euros for us, and they have come from less privileged backgrounds. They have walked a mile in our shoes, and they know what it's like to not have food in their bellies. They know what it's like to trek for miles to go to their football training, such as Raheem Sterling trekking all the way to Heathrow with his big sister for hours, his mother working 2 jobs every single morning just to keep food on the table for these players. So to say that they don't know what we're going through, I think it's kind of just a little bit ignorant. I think we should give them a lot more credit than we are giving them right now. They know what it's like.
I mean, Mike Parry, I was just going to say, Mike Parry, those footballers are come from the background of their fans much more than a lot of the politics, you know, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. I mean, the Chancellor's hugely wealthy. Prime Minister, you know, member of the Bullingdon Club when he was at Oxbridge. You know, I mean, the footballers are much more in touch with the issues of real people. You can talk about the massive salaries they're on now. They're only on those salaries for a short period of time in their lives. Well, many of them are supporting extended families. You know, they're relatable. Despite their weekly salary, they're relatable.
They're on those salaries for about 10 years. They earn enormous amounts of money. Most footballers these days, when they finish playing, are worth about 65 million quid. And they deserve every penny because they're special and they've got a great talent. But they are in a bubble from the age of about 14. In 2011, we revised the academy system in this country. And that's why we've got so many great young players, not only who are great footballers, but socially aware of their responsibilities.
Mike Parry, you say they're in a bubble, like they're in some sort of gilded bubble. They're not.
No, they are.
Sorry, Mike, they are not. And most of those players who are in the academy system will not go on to earn millions. And they are under enormous pressure from very young ages to achieve. Actually, so that is a complete misdescription to call them, you know, in some sort of protected bubble.
No, Susanna, it's not. Believe me, if you're spotted as a potential England footballer from the age of 13 or 14, believe me, you have a lavish lifestyle. You know, managers of Premier League clubs have said in the past, 16-year-old kids turning up in baby Bentleys driven by chauffeurs to get to training, and that's the sort of world in which they live. But I'm not decrying it. What I'm saying is there are loads of problems with this country. Obviously, school meals is a very emotional one, but for instance, we haven't got enough lorry drivers in this country. I wouldn't mind a footballer coming forward and saying, listen, guys, let's appeal to middle-aged men. Mike. Go and get yourself an HGV licence to become a lorry driver because you're going to find stuff running out in the supermarket soon. We won't have food. We've got no lorry drivers. Now, that, you know, is a big national issue, but it's not popular, you know what I mean? It doesn't get a headline to start talking about lorry drivers.
What politician would ever seek popularity? I mean, there's a question. Let's finish with Abiomi. I mean, do you think we might be approaching a point in our history where some footballers, when their playing careers finish, will move into politics? I mean, if you look at America, you've had Hollywood actors becoming president, you've had lawyers becoming president. Do you think in this country we might actually, off the back of all that's happened in the last few months and the last couple of years, maybe see some footballers moving into politics?
Anita?
I can't speak for footballers here and say that, you know, maybe we might see a shift of them moving into politics. However, I do see a shift in social change. I see more footballers wanting to get involved with political issues, and that's where the change comes, you know. I don't necessarily think they're going to become ministers. I don't necessarily think they're going to become the Prime Minister, maybe, long shot, but I see them wanting to do more to make change. As you said before, the players in '96, there's a complete difference between those players back then and the players now. So what I am looking forward to is heaps of change and a lot more hope, but especially for the younger generation who will be led by these footballers making these campaigns. As we can see, the Marcus Rashford campaign has changed the lives of several young children. Hence why when they did defame his mural in Manchester, young children went by there to help him and to cover up all the defamation on his mural. So I do see them making a lot more change in politics.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you both very much indeed for your time. Enjoy that conversation.